Okay.
Okay, we're ready, Mr. Richards.
Okay. This is an official meeting of the Council's Public Safety Committee. I would like to, first of all, welcome all of you who are in attendance by way of Zoom or by telephone. As long as you're connected with us, I want to welcome you to be a part of this important meeting. I am Fred Richardson. I am chairman of the Public Safety Committee. Other council members are Gina Gregory and John Williams. John is not going to be on video, but he is with us.
That's right.
Somebody has, okay. Other council members present, we have council members Bess Rich, Joel Daves, and CJ Small. I don't think we have anybody else. We have our city clerk, Lisa Karen, her staff with her. We have our attorney, Chris Aldridge with us, and I don't know who is representing the administration, if any.
I have Matt Anderson on here. I'm not sure if that is actually Matt or if that's his phone, but someone from the administration is on.
Yeah, this is Matt.
Okay.
Okay, that's Matt.
Okay, Matt Anderson from the administration is in attendance. Thank you, Matt, for being with us today. Okay, so we have two. Do we have anybody from the media here? Is anybody?
No.
Okay, all right, okay. There are two issues before us today. One is the ordinance for vacating city streets or right-of-ways. And the second one is an ordinance for closing any city street. The first one, I think, is simple, is not as complicated. The one dealing with vacating right-of-ways. So I think I recommend that we take that one up first. Okay. Now this one, the first portion of it, it just telling us that we have the authority to do it, and it goes down to section 8, where we start talking about filing, the filing of any petitions with the city clerk. That's where the action is really going to start. If you want to keep from having to read through all of this, so we can have Chris to give us an overview of this, and anyone who would like to chime in to say that they challenge any section of it can do it. Would your committee, would y'all agree to that?
That sounds great. That sounds great.
Okay. So Chris, would you look at number 8, filing of petitions, a petition with the clerk, and if you give us an overview on that, then we'll see where we are with that. Then we'll move on to section B.
Okay. The street vacation ordinance, just so everybody's clear, is talking about a permanent vacation of a portion of a public right of way. And it could be a street, it could be an alley, it could be a street that's been platted that was never paved or anything, that might go through somebody's backyard. Could be a lot of different things. And when a street like that is vacated, that means the public loses all rights to that street, and the property that was formerly in the street goes to the adjoining landowners up to the halfway point between, say, if it's between two properties. And it can't be undone unless later on those landowners convey a right of way back to the city in some manner. The process is somewhat, in a large part, is already governed by state law, and a lot of this is sort of repeating what the state law already
Right.
requires. And it's not all that different than what we're doing right now on vacations. It's just making it clear. But it does make it, when we're talking about a paved street that is open to traffic right now, there's two parts. You got to have the adjoining landowners, abutting landowners, file a petition, and they also have to sign this thing called a declaration of vacation. But you also have to get the city council to consent to the vacation. And the council doesn't have, just because the abutting landowners asked for it, the council doesn't have to approve that. And so the council, this ordinance as written, would pretty much make it more difficult to totally vacate an existing street. It is not going to change the process for an alley or an unopened street or something that nobody actually uses and no money's been put into it. So in section A2, you got to submit a vacation, and then of course you have to have the abutting landowners, a petition. You have to submit a petition, I meant to say. And then if it's an open street, paved street, or paved alley that the city maintains, then anybody that's in that subdivision also would have to join in the petition. And then also anybody that owns property within 300 feet of that area, because they're all going to be affected somehow by this closing. And then the petition has to show certain things. It's got to have a map and the respective property values, the square footage, and those sorts of things. And then if there is this is just for paved streets and things, they have to have a traffic study saying that the closure, it's complete permanent closure of this street is not going to negatively affect the traffic patterns and things. That has to be submitted to the clerk. They've got to meet some administrative criteria, some labels, and pay a filing fee. They also have to get consents from the various utility companies, which they have to do that now. And then once all those requirements have been met, that's considered to have been, the petition is deemed to be complete and submitted. There's an exception to all these requirements, not all of them, but the more onerous ones for governmental entities such as the state of Alabama, Mobile County, and places like people like that. So once the petition is submitted, then the various city departments review it. They're welcome to submit their comments or objections, if any, to the clerk within a certain period of time, and need to obtain letters from the police and fire departments that it's not going to hinder public safety by vacating the street. And it will be scheduled for public hearing, which has to be within 100 days from the date the petition is deemed submitted. Published, certain publications have to be made. It's going to require them to post a little sign out on the property saying it's been requested to be vacated, just like you see with planning,
Right.
and things like that. And that's pretty much it. Now, the law allows us to charge the city for a vacation because they're getting land, is what it amounts to. The city council currently, and this is not changing, if it's a value of less than $5,000, typically they waive that. And sometimes they waive it even beyond that. It's just kind of at council discretion. And then once all that is done, the council votes, the resolution and the declaration have to be recorded at probate court. And that's pretty much it. it's other than getting more consents and some of the administrative stuff, it's not really all that different than what they're doing now.
Okay. Okay, committee members, you wanna chime in first?
I think this is, oh, I'm sorry, Gina.
No, that sounds good to me, Chris. Since it separates things like alleyways, from a paved street, that's really important. But all of that sounds all right to me. I don't have any objections.
John?
There's no objections here at all, Fred. It was a long time coming. I think this one's easy.
Okay, any council member?
Yes.
Come on, Beth.
Thank you. And thanks, Chris, for the summary. The question I have is on C, under A rather, filing of the petition, and then number C, where the Alabama Supreme Court for Airmont, they were able to win the vacation, and based on the fact that the party that had come forward to object did not live in the subdivision. So when you talk about impossible, I think C makes it totally impossible. And sometimes a vacation is necessary. So if it's that difficult, yet the Supreme Court ruled for a neighborhood when there was an objection from a resident in another subdivision who would have liked that entry at Airmont, they didn't win. So are we looking for something that would be challenged if we make it as difficult to get a vacation as the Supreme Court landed on the fact that somebody out of the subdivision did not have a say?
Well,
Where are you?
Come on, Chris.
She's in A2C, I believe.
Yes.
Oh, because she suddenly, okay,
Yeah.
because.
All right, the way I understood that case, that case, there's a set of laws. It's under Title 35, I believe, and that's where the owners sign their thing, the declaration of vacation. Then you got to get if it's in a municipality, the municipality has to approve, which is under section 23. I think it's 23-4 or something. So that appeal was based on the Title 35 issue, and there really wasn't an issue with 23, but 23 is where y'all make your decision. So what this is saying is the council, they're not going to grant their permission without these extra requirements being met. So you can't do less than what the legislature said, but you can make it more restrictive if you want to. So you're making it more restrictive by granting your permission. This doesn't change on the Title 35 stuff. Yeah, they just have to have the people that abut, which is, the ones that touch the little piece of land that's getting vacated.
Right. Like we did for Farnell. I mean, that was, for Rosswood, but it was Farnell Lane that went into a whole nother subdivision that was cut off across. So it just seems that that's asking people to be part of something that when a subdivision comes forward to kind of get their streets in an orderly fashion. I don't see that when you say impossible, I think this creates the complete impossibility of ever making it a viable option for someone to come forward. Because if it's two lots that are in the same subdivision, which was Rosswood's, ability to vacate, they didn't go into that next subdivision to ask permission, even though there are homes that technically would have been abutting. So to me,
Uh,
it's just very, very difficult. And it makes it that it would never transpire for the most part. And why have something on the books that doesn't at least create some path that could resolve a problem? Because that's mostly why you put laws in place, so that it's something that can be achieved at some point following all of the rules. So,
you're true, Beth?
well, I also had some problems with D about having to do a traffic impact study. That's also part of what this council is asking a neighborhood to do. And that would have to be an outside study. So a neighborhood that really didn't have a lot of economic engine, so to speak, how would they, I mean, those are thousands of dollars to do a traffic impact study. Could we ask that the city do the study that's presented to council? Why does it have to be an outside study?
Joel?
You see my point?
I think it's important to keep in mind that what we're talking about here is vacations.
Yes.
An irrevocable closing of a street. And so I think that vacations should of open rights of way, which is what we're talking about here, because the only time you need to go through all this if it's an open right of way. Mm-hmm. So vacations of open rights of way should be difficult, should be very difficult.
Yeah,
let Joel finish.
Well, I wasn't done, but okay.
Because it is. Okay, Bess, you go ahead.
Okay, my point is that you're asking for a traffic impact study. I don't have a problem with that. It's just that we don't specify who is supposed to do that study. And these are residents coming forward. So that could be a very costly hurdle for a neighborhood. Some neighborhoods, maybe not so much. They could pool their resources together. But what about the neighborhood that cannot do that and still has a legitimate reason to reroute traffic? Because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to reroute traffic. When you vacate something, you don't want people going in the pattern that's already there. It's created a problem. So all I'm asking is that I believe that it's okay for the council to have this information. I don't disagree with you. It's a benchmark that should be met. But I don't think we should ask for that to be done by the citizens, because that's the way I read this. And again, it will be an impossibility, not for everybody, but a good amount of residents cannot afford to do an impact study, because those are in the thousands of dollars. And we have the resources because we have a traffic engineering department. And so that's something that you might want to consider as part of it. Those were the two things. Other than that, like Chris said, it's basically what we request on a petition for vacation. But again, if you're going to have something on the books, I don't know how it will ever be achieved unless that was, basically the, why it was being developed. And yet I think vacation still has merit, especially for neighborhoods that have been, some of the zoning around them has changed than when they were originally platted. So that's it. I mean, I hope you would consider it could be a city study. Either, both options, maybe.
Okay, Joel?
I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay. I would like to say that it seems to me what this ordinance is saying. If you want us to give you some of our land for your use and nobody else's use, right now, almost 200,000 people can use that piece of land. But you want it exclusive for you and your group. Prove to us that we ought to do that. Prove to us that it's necessary for us to do that. So you can't come to us and ask us for the proof. You got to prove to the city that what you're asking for is worded. And the city is telling you, you got to do A, B, and C, and D for us to, you got to furnish us that, for us to consider that and determine, we're not going to be able to determine whether it's worded or not unless you give us A, B, C, D, and E. And you're saying, I don't think we ought to give you D now because it's cost a lot of money. Well, the land we give it up is going to cost money too. The city is giving that to y'all for y'all to have it in perpetuity from here on and now on, and you're going to block the other citizens off from using it. You got to, I think you need to furnish us everything it calls for in here. I'm not opposed to anything that is in here.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
depending on the, I guess, depth of the traffic study that is done, usually those things are not that difficult to do. It may be fairly easy and not take much time if the traffic engineer actually did these traffic studies. It might be something worth looking at and asking her if it would be a possibility.
It's not a matter, I don't think, whether or not we can do it. It's a matter of whether or not the city ought to be assisting somebody to close up our street. The city is not going to assist. Here's somebody that's trying to get a piece of city property that is a right of way. And the city is not trying to assist him in getting the property. The city is saying, bring us these set of facts for us to consider, and then we'll make a determination as to what we ought to do. So the idea that, okay, I want the city to do that, I want the city to do it, and the city said, no, you're the one want it. If you want it, then bring us this. It ain't the matter whether the city can do it. The city can do that, but then the city would have joined you in your petition. The city can't join you in your petition because the city got to be the one to review it and approve it. So they can't join you in the petition.
Well, if the city does the traffic study and then the city reviews the traffic study of the city engineer, I think that would be a fairly easy thing to do. And if the city is going to get paid for this property, then that in itself would be another reason that the city could consider using the traffic engineer. I just don't think that that's such a big problem that we ought to consider it. At least talk to Jennifer White and find out if it's a possibility, what the time and cost could be. I mean, it's worth looking at. And besides that, if the city, the council does agree to this vacation, then in effect, we are working with our citizens and we are benefiting the same way they are because it's a benefit for everyone for whatever reason they're trying to do it. I mean, you got to look at the greater good, not just one, just black and white on this.
Come on, Joe.
Look, well, I think there's some benefit in having an independent engineer do this. Because if it's done by the city, the allegation can always be made that it's been
Tainted.
part of it's tainted, it's part of a political process. But if this provision is the difference between getting this ordinance passed and not getting this ordinance passed, I'm willing to live with the city engineer doing it, the traffic engineer doing it. I think it's a better process if it's an independent study than if it's the traffic engineer. But I don't want the whole thing to go down in flames just because of that.
I see Ricardo come on. He may have an opinion.
Mr. Woods, how you doing?
Well,
Yeah, welcome to the committee meeting. Is there anything you want to add or say on
so
this?
I was going to tell you all, so it's probably much better that you have an independent study done for two reasons. Mr. Richardson, I think, makes a valid point. We do not want to put our traffic and engineering people under additional stress, one. But two, the second part is we would have no idea of how to control the workflow as it comes in on vacation for them going out actually doing those studies. And so that's problematic. And then the third thing is a resolution can't direct them to do anything. I mean, but the biggest problem is the workflow is not something that they would be able to handle on doing these. And tied to that is just what you all mentioned. You want an independent body doing it. You want an independent person doing it, but it has to be up to spec on what the traffic engineers are reviewing. So there's a really valid point of having an independent entity come in and do this for somebody who is asking for valuable city-owned property. That's the city bearing the expense versus an independent party or association or buyer bearing the expense.
That's one thing I was going to say. We got to be careful about directing the staff to do stuff.
We can't pass an ordinance saying that the traffic engineer will conduct the study. Then we would have become administrative in our work. We can't.
Yep.
We can't do it. Plus, we've already, when we get to the next section, then all of the city departments going to have to review what they brought to us. So we don't have to review that because we're the one did it. It's inappropriate. It's inappropriate. So we don't have to review none of this because the city really did it for them. It's inappropriate. The city got to always be able to review. That's section B. It's whatever when they bring all of that to us, it's gonna be formed out to the various city departments to say, will it work? Is this sufficient? And all of that. And we can't form it, we can't go out there and do it. And then that's not how it's set up.
That's well put. Hey, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
through this discussion, I mean, I see where Bess is coming from, and some neighborhoods would not be able at certain times, but like we did with the Parks Department and the folks that were teaching, volunteering to their time to teach folks fitness, and our discretionary money, unless Chris tells me otherwise, could certainly be used to help a neighborhood organization to attain what they need to in the form of traffic engineering.
If they have a community organization with a 501c3, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's always enough.
There's always that, yeah.
But we could do it through another POA,
I think we can I think it's a way to get past that. If you need help, you need to say you need help. We don't know what it's going to cost at this particular point now, but I know if it's a street in my district, I would be trying to help. I help them with cameras. I would be trying to help them with traffic, with a traffic study. But I don't think it'll be appropriate for the city to do that. I just don't think it'll be appropriate for the city to do that. And we've heard that from our attorney and from the city attorney. Both said the same thing. So, do we have any further discussion on that? If not, we're going to go to section B. Chris, go to section B and look at section B.
Which part? Review by city departments?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a specific question?
Well, I think
Fred, I'm not sure that there's any controversy with respect to the rest of the ordinance.
I don't think so either. I don't think, because we know all of what they bring that's got to be reviewed. That's what that section say. Then we got to schedule a public hearing.
Right.
The rest of it is automatic the things that we're automatically going to have to do. I got sent a notice of a hearing. But now the criteria and condition for vacations, is that something that we because I think that might be something.
I don't think we had any change there, did we?
That's still the same. No, that's probably still the same thing. Okay, so that would be the same. We've already gone over that.
The fees are, no changes in the fees.
No changes in the fees. Okay. And the rest of it is, if any part of it is not legal, then the rest of it will stand. I think that's, before we move on, is there anything anybody else want to say on this one? If not, we will move on to the next one.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'd like, if you don't mind, I think it was a really good idea to separate the vacations from the closures. I think it has really made this discussion a lot easier. And I don't know who came up with that suggestion. I don't think it was me, but whoever did, I want to pat them on the back because it was really a smart idea. But what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is go ahead and bring this ordinance forward, even if we have to continue discussion on the closures.
I don't have nothing against that. Can I get committed to Dee and John?
Yeah.
I'm in.
I-
That's fine.
Okay, so that's what we'll do.
So, Mr. Arledge, if you could just prepare this in its final form with the little corrections you made in it and give it to the clerk, and we'll go ahead and bring it forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Richardson,
Yes.
are you going to allow the people to address the committee?
Well, this will be a time if you want to address us on street on vacations. Do we have someone want to address us on vacations? If so, yes.
Okay, well, no, Mary Ann is telling me that they want to address on the other.
On the
other
closures.
issue. Yeah.
Okay, we're taking up street closures now. Okay, so the first part has to do, Chris, I would like for you to do the same thing on this one, but the first part has to do, skip all these definitions. We know we don't need to go there.
Okay. All right, so this second ordinance is talking about traffic calming measures and closures of streets. Traffic calming are things like, speed bumps and stuff like that. And then closures, a street can be closed. They can close, the city could close the street right now. It's shutting it off on a temporary basis is what it amounts to. City still owns the right of way. So the first sections, of course, the definitions you mentioned, and then it's creating some criteria for which traffic calming devices could be put in, and which, it's got a lot of metrics, I guess you could call it, about total vehicle speed and things like that, which also would have to be studied. Somebody's got to figure all that out. It's got some limitations on placement. And then the other, I guess, part B, I guess you could call it, of this ordinance is if the traffic calming part doesn't work, it creates a way to get a street closed, subject to being reopened at some point. And some of the process is same as far as notice and sending out letters to the neighborhood and getting the neighborhood to sign on to it. And I think we had like a percentage of people that had to approve it. I can't find that section right now, maybe 70 or 75%.
5% majority of all dwelling units.
Right. So it's more for traffic control than totally shutting off traffic.
Right.
Now, there's been this one is generated a lot more comments, and I've heard, we don't like this paragraph, or this paragraph needs to be changed, and I haven't really gotten any comments from the administration on this particular ordinance. And I'll just tell you how I came up with this. I was asked for a ordinance. So I went and looked at what are other cities doing, and looked all around the state and basically copied some of their ideas, and also looked, tried doing some searches like on a national level to find some of this stuff. So I think the metrics are subject to change. It would be super helpful for those who don't like it or want something different to say what it is they want. Because really, we can just write down only what you tell us to write down. Some expert input would be very desirable, I think, on this to come up with something that, accomplishes the goal.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just a couple of things. Chris, I heard you say that what this is kind of going forward. If calming doesn't work, then this is a method to take it further to like a temporary closure sort of thing. But backing up to calming, like speed bumps, traffic tables, and all of that, we had a little bit of a discussion a couple of weeks ago with the mayor during a meeting as to what the policy was going to be for speed bumps, speed tables, etc. And they said they were going to get back with us on what the policy is, because we've gone back and forth with, are we going to use speed bumps? Are we not? If we are, then what is the process? And the process to date, when we have used speed bumps and all of those kinds of things, has been fairly simple. We get requests from the neighborhood. Then the city council office sends out basically a survey for somebody to get it filled out, with 70% of the people who live in the area have to sign on to it to agree to have some sort of calming devices. And then it goes to the engineering department. They go investigate and determine whether these speed bumps are needed, and if so, where. And then it comes down to funding after that. And over the last so many years, the funding has come from our CIP when we have put in any speed bumps, and it's been a long time since we have installed any speed bumps. So I'm just wondering exactly where we are on this speed bump, speed table policy. Is the city going to use them or not? Are we wasting our time talking about this in this ordinance or not?
Gina, we are establishing law. What we do with this ordinance is going to be the law for all of us to abide by. We are setting, if you go to section 61.398, it says approval required prior to installation. We are setting that forth now. These are the things you're going to have to do if you want a speed hump. You don't have to call. So, first of all, the ordinance says that the community is going, if they want a speed hump, they got to pay for it. That's what this ordinance says.
Yeah, I see
You want
it.
a speed hump? I think that's going to end. That's going to put an end to speed humps.
Well,
Speed
I
humps
see
hump
that
costs almost $7,000 for one speed hump. It's
Yeah.
in this
Same
ordinance.
argument.
I mean,
But
we
the
just
same argument holds true, Mr. Chair, that that our discretionary money can be used to assist those neighborhoods. We're just setting a baseline. And if they don't have the means to do that, then of course the city can always pay. But if we say the city's going to pay for everything, then that's exactly what will happen every time. And I think that
Well,
but it goes back to the question of the traffic engineer, because years ago, our traffic engineer decided that speed bumps, speed tables were the absolute best thing in the world to calm traffic. Years go by, new information comes out, and the traffic engineers no longer feel that way. And that's kind of where we are now, because we haven't been installing many of these speed bumps. And of course, we're not putting them on these major traffic corridors because it interferes with public safety trucks. So I'm just putting it out there because we discussed this a couple of weeks ago. What are we doing with speed bumps and traffic calming devices? And now we've got something in an ordinance telling us this is how you do speed bumps and traffic tables. So that's just all new. It's new for the city to have an ordinance that spells it out. And I still think we need to hear from traffic engineering and the administration as to, are we going to use these things or not? I mean, maybe we make it so difficult at $7,000 a pop that nobody's going to, try to move forward with them. But, I'm just trying to get a clear, look at exactly what it is we're doing with them.
Well, this ordinance set makes it clear that it is the traffic engineer's responsibility to determine whether or not a speed control device is needed. That's in this ordinance here.
Now, if she comes back and says that, given all of my traffic engineering knowledge and training today, speed bumps are not effective, I am not doing speed bumps, then what do you say?
Now, we want to know.
I think I'm playing devil's advocate on this because that's kind of the way it has been. And I see Ricardo smiling, so maybe we need some input, Ricardo.
But before Ricardo says anything, I remember Mobile before we had any speed humps, where I got calls for speeding. This is very seldom do I get a call on that because the speed hump replaced the police officer. The speed humps are they are taking care of what they ain't no such thing as whether or not they are effective or not. You can't go down these streets speeding if they got speed humps on there.
Oh, yeah, you can if they do.
But a lot of times it's people who is not living there. You'll tell if you do that every day, run over those speed humps every day, you would tear your car up. So you might have one or two people doing that, but you can't stop them anyway. By and large, it reduces the speed on these streets, so we can't come and say they're not effective. I disagree with that.
Well, Fred, I'm not saying that I am opposed to them. I am just trying to get a clear answer on whether the city, being our traffic engineer, feels like this is a direction that we need to go, whether they are effective or not. Now, I can believe they're effective all day long, but I'm not the traffic engineer. So that's what I'm asking. We've never had an ordinance that spelled it out. It was always a policy that we went by, and it's changed over the years.
We're not setting any policies. Council set the law.
I see this would be a law. I do see that.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to leave in a few minutes to go to another meeting. And I just wanted to, if I could just make one comment on this ordinance right here, and I've discussed this with Ms. Rich. There's a lot in here. My primary concern is with who is going to pay for these, the installation of these devices, whether they be speed humps or gates, if they are installed at the request of the residents. If the city itself decides to install something, then the city needs to bear that expense. But if the residents petition to have a speed bump or a gate installed, then my thinking is that the resident ought to pay for that, and we can, as John points out, we can supplement it with CIP funds. But my experience, I've had in District 5, there's one particular instance of which I'm aware where these gates were installed, and they break all the time. They break of themselves, or you have one person coming down the street that doesn't like the fact that they're a gate there and they're in a big truck and they just go right smack through it. And so I think that I think the gates are very problematic for the city to be paying for the installation and maintenance of it. So that's just my concern. I wanted to throw that out. As I say, I'm gonna have to leave in a few minutes, but thank you very much.
Okay. All right, do we have, John, you remember the committee, you want to say anything?
No, I thought that we were gonna maybe hear a little bit from Ricardo. I mean, we also have that citizen we need to listen to that's called, talk about this very thing. So I'll hold my
Yeah.
comment till then.
Yeah, we're gonna wait till we wrap it up and then we're gonna let them come. Okay. Okay, Ricardo, you want to say something?
So yes, so Ms. Gregory makes a fine point, because we're dealing with legislative issue, but the policies are administrative, which they're being those policies are being updated. So traffic engineering does those policies, but as to Mr. Arledge's point, he was asking, hey, look, I need the experts to chime in on this, and they will. So that's what he was referencing, is the experts have to come in and say, this is what's state of the art and this is what doesn't work. Because it doesn't make sense, as Ms. Gregory said, it doesn't make sense to put something into an ordinance that won't work in align with the city's policy. And that's what Mr. Arledge was referring to is, look, I need the experts to weigh in on what they don't like about these metrics and what does and doesn't work for a city of our size and scope with the population and the traffic counts that we have. So that's something that we'll work on providing. The reason that we're having to rework our administrative policies because they're really, really old and outdated. And so this point is something that traffic engineer will need time to weigh in on to give you the right metrics to make sure it aligns with the traffic policies so that this all works.
Okay, this segment deals with traffic calming, and it lists rumble strips, speed bump, speed hump, speed lump, speed table. It has the traffic engineer has an assortment of options to select from, not no one. And if there's something else we don't know about that the traffic engineer is aware of that will work inside of these neighborhoods, that's why we call this meeting, so the traffic engineer can say, no, I don't think we ought to use any of those. We need to use a speed whatever. We could add that to this. They got a whole bunch of them here to say that you can select from. So it ought to be the traffic engineer's option to say that neighborhood ought to put down this and this is what it would cost. That's the end of that. That would be the end of that. All of this gonna come up, if they said they need speed control devices, it's going to the traffic engineer. That's what this ordinance says. It's gonna go to them. We can't make that decision. The traffic engineer can say, based on our traffic study, they don't even, I know I had one in District 1, they wanted 2 traffic control devices. I asked the traffic engineer to do a study. It came back, no one was driving more than 20 miles per hour. So we didn't put them in. Although they no need for it. Because we had put one in on a neighborhood not far from there, and they felt they needed one too. That's not why we put them in. So the traffic engineer would have to come back and make that determination. We're not taking that from the traffic engineer. That's what's going to have to make that determination.
If I could comment?
Come on, Ben.
Thank you. If you look at number 1, Chairman, you'll see it says traffic calming device means any device installed. So you are basically opening it up, and then there's definitions for the things we're familiar with, but it does leave open the door that there are other means to reroute or to calm traffic. So I think that's in there. I'm very pleased to hear Mr. Woods talk about the traffic engineering looking at policies and procedures so that if we are going to write something that comes through a law, so to speak, on how a neighborhood could look at a petition process, since it's always been a petition process. I mean, the traffic engineer wouldn't even talk to a resident that didn't have 70% of the street,
That's right.
that it would be even looked at, because they didn't want to see all the opposition jumping out after they took so much time to study and to then place it, or, decide not to place it. But traffic calming has been on the ground here since 1996. And it's very effective in slowing traffic. They cannot keep the volume of speed for the velocity of time, because they have to slow down in between, which is the whole idea. And for a while it did discourage, but once you get additional lighting, meaning traffic lights at intersections, or different programs, different types of zoning that conflict with a R1 residential area, the street then takes on a whole nother platform. But I guess I would just say to slow down on both of these items, even maybe separate a closure from how you go about getting a closure, even a temporary closure. And the temporary is in order to keep police and fire coming through, but not everyday traffic. And then looking at the traffic calming, because that doesn't change the platform of a street. People can come through, they just have to go slower. So again, they're two separate things, and maybe this should be two separate items that we work with our city officials and come up with something that then a citizen can pick up the law, find out what they need to do, petition, whatever. I do oppose paying. I think that it helps stabilize neighborhoods to get these common devices. It's a good thing to do if it's required and requested. And, you don't always know if councils will have discretionary funds. If they have CIP funds, they could always have a line item for traffic calming devices. But there has to be something, especially for a neighborhood that can't afford to do it, but needs to stay stable and not have traffic cutting through, or people speeding and harming somebody, because that'll ruin a neighborhood completely. So that's just my thoughts on this. But thank you.
Hey, Fred.
Yes.
I agree with Bess. I think we need to slow it down a little bit and look at the traffic calming as separate from closing the streets. And then in doing that, get with Jennifer White and just get her take on everything as to what traffic calming devices work, don't work, what should we be looking at doing. And I like the fact that if a neighborhood signs a petition, if that's where we go, and 75% of them sign on one, the traffic device, and the traffic engineer has said, yes, it is needed, I think it should be paid for out of our CIP. I don't have a problem with that, because the traffic engineer has said it is needed, whether it's traffic, numbers of traffic or motorists coming through, or speeding, or whatever it is. So having that as part of our CIP, I think would be important. Now, not everybody in the past has put something in their CIP for traffic calming, and you might not have gotten any in specific year, but that's something we can look at. The other thing too is just a question, because it's come up when we resurface. In the past, when we have resurfaced, some of my speed bumps have been pulled up and were not replaced. And we've got a big resurfacing program coming up now. So that's another question. Are we going to leave those speed bumps in place? Are they going to be pulled up? If they're pulled up, are they going to be replaced? And who pays for that?
Good point.
I don't want to lose any speed humps that I have in my district.
Well, I have.
I have too.
Yeah.
Oh no, I never heard that before.
Oh, certainly. Look at Houston Street, Tut Hill.
Well, some of them, like Tut Hill in between Old Shell and Spring Hill, now that's looked at as a fire lane. So we got to get that in the whole mix. The fire lane, well, it's not, because if it's a fire lane, they're not allowed. And they took every one of them up on Tut Hill that was considered a fire lane.
I believe that the person that's bidding to resurface the street need to place in there whatever he or she needs to do to resurface the street and put it back like it was. I don't think they ought to take up anything and not put it back unless they got permission from somebody else to do it.
Well, that's Gina's point, is that the public safety decides that that is now a higher priority right of way or whatever you call it, and they administratively decide that that's not going back in. That's
Well, if it's a fire lane, if the fire department says it's a fire lane now, then
right.
they don't have to put, they can't go back
That's
with
right.
it.
That's right.
But public safety can come from anywhere. Public safety is dealing with the fire department. If the fire department says a fire lane, it's nothing you can do about that. But I'm talking about inside neighborhoods. Normally, fire lanes not inside a neighborhood.
I had some come up in a neighborhood and they were not fire lanes and they were not replaced.
Oh,
Right.
I would have been screaming and hollering.
I was told that they were not doing speed bumps anymore.
Mhm.
And you're talking about speed humps that was already done.
Yeah.
But you ain't asking them to do.
That's why I want to get something clear so that we know what page, we're all on the same page. We've got to get this thing cleared up so that all hands know what we're doing.
With you.
Do we want speed control devices in our neighborhood?
Yes.
If they work, I'm fine. But let's hear from Jennifer. Let's let her weigh in.
She's not here to weigh in.
Can the committee meet with, ask to have her in attendance at a time that's convenient for her? That would be excellent. And our legal counsel.
Okay, so if what we want to say now is that we would just end the discussion on traffic calming devices and schedule another meeting for traffic calming devices and ask the traffic engineer to be present. If that's what the committee will want to do.
If the administration is ready for that, because we heard from Ricardo that he said they're dividing and coming up with things, devising rather. So if they're ready, that's the time to meet and to get something we can all live with that makes a difference for neighborhoods.
Jennifer is the administration, is part of the administration. That's what I'm saying, bringing the administration to the table. I don't know who else.
Right.
Whoever
But
in the
he said they're
administration
working on it, so I don't know where she is on it. That's what I'm saying.
We don't either, but I'm saying, do we need to schedule a meeting with Jennifer, with the entire, the mayor, all of them, to talk about traffic calming devices?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just coordinate. Maybe Lisa can coordinate with the administration, see where they are and see when they'll be ready, because we don't want to hold a meeting, say we're going to schedule a meeting in 2 weeks and they're
not ready.
Let's get with them, find out if they're going to be prepared, and then go forward.
Gina, nobody's going to do that. I'm asking the committee, would you like for us to take up traffic calming later? If so, I'll schedule a meeting. When I schedule the meeting, I will make sure that the administration, all of them say they can make that, and all of the council members can make the meeting. I'm not going to schedule a meeting just for me and 2 or 3 to be there. I want everybody on that.
Logical, certainly logical.
So do I hear the committee saying that we want to have this meeting on common devices?
Yes.
Okay, so I would range. We need to. Then we're gonna let common devices go because we'll take that up at a later time.
Are you going to separate calming from temporary or closures that reroute traffic but are not a permanent closure?
I would.
We can.
Because those are two separate things.
I think so too.
Chris, can we do that, Chris? Can you do that?
Yeah, it can be done. That's the easy part. Yeah. I think we ought to find out what like y'all are talking about. What's the administration going to agree to do? Yeah.
Well, we'll find out. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do that. We'll do that. we're not getting ready to pass the law. We're trying to get all the information necessary to pass the law. We don't have it all. We need to meet with the administration to find out what it is. We'll get that done. So, okay, so we're going to separate those two, like Beth recommended. Okay, so then we're down to, so you want street closures and alleys would be the next section. Closure of, that's going to be 61-400. Closure of streets, alleys, and public right-of-way.
That's not a vacation.
No.
Outdoor, the fastest, which you won't, still 1 day, 2 days.
Okay. So, Chris, you want to skip down to section 61-400?
Amy said that. She was gonna need her up here.
Yeah, you want a synopsis of that?
Yeah.
All right, we've got, closure by city council, which, you know, this city has a traffic engineer and, but generally speaking, the city council has control of city property, which includes the street.
Right.
Now, the administration runs it on a day-to-day basis, but it's basically saying, okay, we close it by the city council. The administration can close one, but it limits it to no more than 60 total days in a year unless the council approves it. And then, or for, you know, I think there was a thing about long construction projects and things. And then there was an option for a closure by the city council pursuant to a petition brought by the neighbors.
Right.
And that one has some criteria about who's got to sign the petition. And sorry. What the petition needs to say, identify where the area you need to close or you're wanting to close, and it's got a filing fee. And it's not as onerous as the vacation, but it's still got some requirements. Still got a city review process by the staff, and still has a public hearing. Got to put the sign out there. And then it can be closed really in any way. You could put up a gate of some kind. You could put up a concrete barrier. You know, put a big pile of dirt in the middle of the road. That it could be closed in really any manner you could think of. And then it creates a penalty if you're cutting through this closed area. That's illegal. And that's pretty much the gist of it, but it's somewhat similar to the requirements for the vacations as far as the review process and stuff.
Yeah, the citizens who would like to have it closed would have to come to the city council with a petition to close it, just like they would do with the vacation.
And because it was tied to this other, it's for, you know, after you've tried the calming measures.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you got to do your calming. That didn't work. Now you try to ask for the closure.
The rerouting of traffic. It's to reroute traffic. That's the whole idea of it.
I would like to share this with council. I've had in my district on 2 separate occasions. I've had citizens to come to close the street. One of those streets was over there in the Murphy High School area. Well, they said they were just traffic was more than what they could bear. They wanted the street closed. So I met with them and I told them that I was Just state to me the problem before we start trying to close the street. And eventually what they said is they gave me the hours that it was unbearable. It was hours when kids was coming to school and when school turned out, school let out. Early in those times, they had no problems with that street. And they told me what direction the traffic was coming from. We put a blanket light at the beginning of that street, and we made that street one way during those periods of time. You can't go but one way. I haven't heard another word from them. If you go to Florence Place, exact same thing. People saying that we can't live with this traffic. They're cutting off Spring Hill Avenue, cutting through. Made it one way. You can't go down Florence Place from Spring Hill Avenue. That was the end of that one. So I said that to say this: if calming devices can't produce the desired results, it's another option. Figure out what way all of this traffic is coming from and make it one way. That's another option. Before
Fred?
the last option ought to be to close. The final option, we should try everything we can try before we close a public street.
Fred?
Yes, ma'am.
On those plans for making something one way, that can work if they're on a grid pattern. But in a lot of neighborhoods out west, they're circles. And so if you make one way, you're going to throw more traffic on the other side. They're one big circle. That's a lot of neighborhoods out west, the way they were planned back in the 70s and 80s when they were developed. So I hear what you're saying, and it's certainly an option, and it worked great on the streets that you mentioned, because hopefully it didn't throw traffic elsewhere, but really discouraged that cut through traffic. But it's difficult on some way neighborhoods are laid out. But I hear what you're saying, and I think everything should be tried.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's good. Well, are we going to listen to the people that signed up to address about this?
When we're through, then because once we listen to them. So are we ready? If you all said we're ready.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, John? Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, let's hear from you.
Okay, we have Laura Clark. Laura Clark is on.
Okay. Ms. Clark, are you there?
Unmute.
I see you. There we go.
Are we going to listen to the people?
Good evening, Ms. Clark. Welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting. We're now listening to our citizens. You're the first one up.
Oh.
We're interested in finding out what you have to say. Good to see you.
Oh, good to see all of you. Thank you. I will fess up that my comments were going to be severely altered based on what I've heard in the last hour. My first comment was going to be, if there's an effort to standardize or clarify ordinances pertaining to vacation and closure, which are the only two things I knew about based on the June 16 ordinance, I'm all for it. What I'm not for is if the procedures are made way more simple so that it's easy to get done, a closure or a vacation. And now I'm hearing a third element to the discussion, which I apologize for being ignorant here on this, about traffic calming devices. I would have two requests, and then I had 4 questions, but I think 2 of them have already been answered. My first request was that I have not been able to obtain a copy of the separated ordinances. I only had the copy from the June 16 when there was a combination of vacation and closure. So if I can, through the city clerk's office or whoever, or online, obtain a copy of the separated ordinances, I would certainly appreciate it. But now it even sounds like there may be a third ordinance dealing in,
Laura, before you go to that one,
okay,
you could go on the city's website,
okay.
and both of those ordinances are up there. So, Chris, can you tell her an easy way to get to them once she's up there?
If it's on the city's website, I'll search under either city
But
council.
Chris can give you a short, he can shorten that
Okay,
up.
great.
If you, on the main city website,
Mhm.
scroll down on the right-hand side, there's a thing that says latest news.
Okay.
And I think both of them are there.
Under latest news. I will do that.
Latest
Thank
news.
you. Thank you. Also, I was wondering, and you had asked for kind of a synopsis from the attorney. If anybody has put together maybe a summary of the proposed significant changes between what's currently in the ordinance and what's in the proposed new 2 or possibly 3 ordinances now, it sounds like, if traffic calming is pulled out of closure. I know one of the things we used to do when we were adopting a new code series or a new section to the subregs, we would prepare a summary sheet of maybe the 10 top significant changes so that people could more readily at a glance see, oh, well, we're talking about notification or signs or something. I think that would be helpful to a lot of we lay people and just regular neighbors here. My 4 questions, and like I said, I don't want to waste your time because it sounds like there's going to be some more meetings with regard to the vacation versus the closure versus traffic calming device ordinances. And I applaud all of that. I think this is a complex topic and everybody's got, some opinions on what affects them most greatly. I did want to ask the attorney if in the closure or the traffic calming device sections, it did say in the original ordinance that the petition to just even get the ball rolling, to get it to the city clerk's office, must include the consent of all property owners within a platted subdivision. I wanted to see if that was still going to be in the proposed new ordinances, and my apologies again, I will certainly get those other copies and take the time to read. So I will just use, as a for instance, Ridgefield, which is my new home. Does that mean every single property owner in Ridgefield would have to consent to a closure or vacation? Or I think I heard something very different on a new or additional traffic calming device. That
I
would
think
be
it's 75% for traffic calming.
okay. And is that to remain? And how current a petition of consent would that have to be? In other words, you couldn't use a petition that was developed in a neighborhood, let's say 2 or 4 years ago. It would have to be a somewhat current petition of 75% owners brought to the city clerk, and then it starts to go from there. Is that correct?
Right. That's
okay.
Right.
That was one. Secondly, and again, I'm going under that June 16 ordinance, which I didn't even know addressed any calming devices, but it did mention that the petition also had to include property owners outside of the platted subdivision, but within 300 feet of the street in question, would have to give their consent. If that would still be in effect under the proposed ordinances, okay. Because again, just as an example, the connection between where the stub is for Ridgefield and where East Drive proper begins, there's about 100 feet of that is actually a city-owned drainage ditch or spillway, a concrete ditch. So that knocks out about 100 feet of property owners along East Drive being notified or having to consent to on a issue that would greatly impact them. My third one, and I think the attorney answered this, and I apologize if I missed it. Is there a sign posting requirement?
Yes.
Under a vacation, a closure, or even a traffic calming device?
No,
Proposal?
Not on the
common.
common. There is on the
Okay.
closure and the vacation.
Okay, I don't know if that's something that is reasonable that could be included if y'all were gonna actually write an ordinance rather than just a policy addressing calming devices. Is that something that could be included to alert people who drive that street once a week to church or every day to and from school or work? Because not everybody is going to be within the notification range as stated in, like I said, the June 16 ordinance, and I'm not sure what now was brought over to the new ones. And then my final one, I promise I'm done. In the closure ordinance and or the traffic calming device maybe ordinance, I wanted to see if either closure or the devices did in fact include gates, mechanical arms, and or barricades in the definition of either closure and or calming devices. And I think the attorney and or Mr. Richardson, y'all answered that, especially
Yes.
under the calming devices can basically include anything up to or down to a pile of sand that prevents vehicular traffic. I hope we don't see that. But my concern there is that a mere 75% of residents, or not residents, I guess it would be property owners. Anyway, I just think I would really like to see a copy of the calming ordinance as opposed to these other two ordinances before I could comment a little bit more intelligently. But thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Hi, Madam Clerk.
Okay, next we have, we have Michelle Dubose Adams. Michelle Adams. Michelle, are you muted?
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I hear you now. Go ahead. Okay, Michelle.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Can you hear us?
Okay, here we go. Now I can. Yes. I'm toggling back and forth between buttons. But I'm going to defer today. I spoke on the last meeting, but I'm going to defer to my husband, John Adams, today.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can't see anyone, so I'm assuming you can hear me. Okay, thank you for hearing me this afternoon. I am a resident of 6008 Ridgefield Place. This is the neighborhood nearest to proposed closing at East Drive and where it intersects with Ridgefield subdivision. I want to, I'll reserve some of my comments because I know you'll continue to work on this ordinance. One thing I wanted to say that I strongly agree with, that I heard Mr. Richardson say a minute ago, was that a closing of a street needs to be the final option. It is the most extreme option I think that the city can consider when it comes to traffic safety. I think long before that, you have to consider every traffic control device. And so I want to make sure that the council has that in mind with regard to not both vacation and closings. We're talking about vacations, and I understand the difference is that a vacation will be permanent, a closing may or may not be permanent. The way the ordinance is written, it says a closing is for an indefinite period of time.
Right.
An indefinite period of time, and it can be for any reason that the council deems to be in the public interest. One point I want to make is that when you are considering the closing of a public street for an indefinite period of time, as a practical matter, that's not much difference for the residents who use that street for ingress and egress from work to home to school. When you are considering closing a street for an indefinite period of time and putting a dead end, essentially, at the end of a street, affecting the use of the street by all citizens, potentially affecting property values, that as a practical matter is not much different to the citizens from a vacation. So I would urge you to consider that, and in doing that, I hope that you will pay attention to all of the procedural mechanisms that you have in the vacation. My reading of the closure ordinance is that it may or may not allow for a public hearing. It may or may not allow for notice to the citizens in the area. The language allows, again, for the city council to close for any reason that it deems in the public interest. My concern is that with the closing ordinance, first of all, I don't think you need a closing ordinance. You have a vacation ordinance. My view of the closing ordinance is that there are those who could not get the consent of all of their neighbors. And because they could not get the consent, they want to change the law. This closing ordinance has some issues that would allow for it to be applied on an arbitrary basis. It lacks a mechanism for any objective standards for closing streets. When you get into that, then the council puts itself in the position of being considered arbitrary on each decision it makes. And I think that's the gist of my comments at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Let me say, first of all, that there's nothing before this council regarding street closures as it pertains to Richfield Place. There's nothing before us. No one has submitted anything for this council to consider in regards to closing a street in Richfield. What we're working on is an ordinance regarding street closures all over the city.
Yes, sir.
Every street. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
it's not, no one has.
We understand.
Yes, sir, I understand.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate hearing from you. Madam Clerk, do we have others?
There are two other people, but I didn't receive notification by Monday at 12 noon for them to address you all, but there are two other people here. I guess they were past the link. Someone passed the link to them.
No, ma'am.
All right, Gina and John. Is John still with us?
No, John is gone. Mr. Williams is gone.
So Gina, what's your pleasure on that?
How many more, Lisa?
There are two.
I don't think we're necessarily moving forward today, but if they want to speak, we should probably go ahead and let them, since this is so new, doing the Zoom meetings and all of that. Unless they would just prefer to send us something in writing, or, wait till the
No,
next.
they're here.
Okay.
I bet you feel the same way. Let them go.
Whatever the committee thinks it's.
Okay, so let them, come on. So do you have are you telling them it's a time limit?
No, I haven't said anything to them.
Okay, because, so 5 minutes is max.
This is Libby, no last name, just Libby. And there's no sound, so, or video, so I don't know. Some people are passing the link to people, and they are not necessarily wanting to address, they're just trying to view it instead of going to the YouTube page. So I'm not sure if these people are on here to address, or if they're just on here. They did not answer in the chat.
Is it a way that you can communicate with Libby?
I did, and they did not answer. I sent a chat message. Everybody doesn't understand and can't see. And there's Amy Betzel, same thing. There's no audio. There's just video. So I'm presuming that they may not want to address. It's just
Listening in, maybe. Yeah.
Right,
okay.
because
All right. So that's it.
Okay.
We're good.
okay, so we're gonna consider this a wrap up. We got this testimony from two people, the Adams and Ms. Clark. So what we'll do is our attorney gonna separate these according to what we said. We're gonna get with the administration and with the council and set a time to come back to talk about traffic calm, if we want to separate that and get all of that nailed down. And then we still got to, then we'll come back again with street closures, and that'll be it.
Mr. Richardson,
Yes.
do we want to wait until we hear from whatever the administration's got to say before we
Schedule a
put
meeting.
it up? Because I mean, whatever their comments are gonna, it may be unnecessary work done without really knowing what they're gonna say, I guess is what I'm saying.
Good point.
So,
Well, but still, Chris, you can separate the closures from the vacation or whatever.
The traffic calming.
well, from traffic calming.
From the closures, you can still separate it. Just take the traffic calming off of.
I'll do that, and I'll remove the part that sort of ties the two together, where you have to do the traffic calming, and see how that looks, and float it around, and then I'll get the vacations one sent over to Lisa and them.
I want to make sure that the administration has a copy of the traffic calming proposed ordinance for traffic calming, and sure, we want to know how they feel about it. Okay, that sounds good.
Is Matt Anderson still with us? Because it'd be nice to have a for for the administration, or at least get an idea if they need a 90 days or 120, so we can tell the public.
Matt is still on.
I'm still here.
So what do you think about that, Matt? I mean, what would you need? And
I think we can get traffic engineering, and I think we might even have, I know one of our traffic engineers was listening earlier. I don't know if they're still on, but anyway, I think within 60 days, or if you said 90 days, that'd be fine too. Whatever suits y'all. We can have something back on traffic calming at the very least, for sure.
I'd like to put this to rest by the end of the year, so 60 days.
Oh yeah. within 60 days.
That's right.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you wanted to set another committee meeting date, at some point between 60 and 90 days in the future, I will have traffic engineering present to deliver something.
Okay, okay. So I will be getting with the city clerk to establish a date for that. And if there's anything else we need to cover, if it is, and John, is there anything else is anything in your
No.
message for?
No, I just, we just need to keep working at it. And we just need to, whatever we end up with, the administration has to buy in, because otherwise it's just a piece of paper. So I'm pleased to hear Mr. Anderson, letting us know that they'll be forthcoming.
Okay, so Gina?
Yeah, I'm good. I agree with John. I think that's good. Ready to
Okay,
move forward.
Okay, Beth?
Yes, I mean, I think we need the administration to work with us to help our neighborhoods. And we know we have problems and there are tools out there. So I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say and how they can sustain our neighborhoods. That when there's traffic issues, it's very negative, and we have a chance to prevent that negativity from continuing. So I'm looking forward to working with the administration.
Okay, so Ricardo, would you like to say anything?
No, sir.
Okay, well, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All righty.
Second.
All right, that's all I need. Let's
All right.
consider this meeting adjourned.